Hank. I still remember when he got killed. It was a very sad day. And they tried to fix it by giving him a lot, and I mean a lot of buffs. Healing, tons of damage, buff damage to the super. None of that helped. So today I'm here to tell you what changes Hank exactly needs for him to be finally back into the meta. So you better be prawn ready, cause we're gonna have some big changes to Hank. Let's start with the most important of them all. He should have the tank trait. This is not something that you can say no. I mean, he takes ages to get the super, and that is one of the things that I will also be fixing on this video. But for now, the tank trait, it is a must-have. He deserves it completely, because his super does not even do much to start off with. So, this is a very nice way to start. Secondly, this might seem a bit weird, but I'm gonna do a lot of changes to his basic attack. Number 1. The reload time will be decreased from 1/4 of a second to 1/10 of a second. So, in case you don't know, Angelo actually has this reload speed, and I will compare Hank a bit to Angelo throughout this video, but that's because Angelo is a very good example of what a character like Hank could be instead of what Hank actually is. So this will be the first one. Secondly, the minimum damage will be reduced from 1045 to 420, and the charge rate will be kinda changed. Instead of being a minimum of 6.5%, so you would need like what? Like 14 hits. Now the minimum will be 3%, so you will need 34 hits. That sounds really bad, but it will be very unlikely for you to hit someone with minimal charge. The good thing is that the maximum charge rate, instead of being 26.25%, it will now be 33%. So with these, you pretty much only need 3 full shots to get the super, instead of the previous 4 full shots, which overall it is a buff in my opinion. And now let's talk about the most important thing of them all in my opinion, the super. His super is a complete mess. What is his super even supposed to do? I mean, now it kinda heals him, so you can use it in a bit of a more defensive way at long range, but still, what is his super doing? Like, it is supposed to counter aggressiveness, but at best you deal 2640 damage, which is the damage of one single torpedo. You can use it on highs, but it will be impossible for you to reach the heist safe. So I will do a lot of changes to super, because this super is just pure garbage in my opinion. So to start off, let's start with the bad things. The damage will be severely reduced from 2640 to 1000. There will be a good reason for that. So you don't really need the damage when your super will now knock back enemies and give them a 1.5 second stun. I mean slow. If it would be a stun, that would be very, very strong. And on top of that, the width of the projectiles will be increased from 0.67 to 1. So it will now also be 50% easier to land the torpedoes to one target. And on top of that, the torpedoes are now slightly guided. Like, imagine Piper's second gadget, kinda guided, sort of. So with all of these changes, the idea is the knockback will help you against assassins and other things like that. The slow will also help you to keep the distance and to charge a bubble to deal some damage to them. Your bubble takes ages to charge, so don't expect to deal that much damage after your super. The extra width and the guided part, it is to make Hank somewhat more approachable to long-range troops, and the guided is especially helpful against more speedy troops, like I know, a hypercharged Colt or something. Lastly, I want his movement speed to be increased from normal to fast. This is mainly because I will completely rework all of his star powers and gadgets, so in order to not to make him actually approachable against enemies, because your super by itself, a 1.5 second slow, is just not enough. So his movement speed at baseline will now be increased to fast, to make sure that he can approach people, because he no longer has the first star power. Gadgets. Both of them are getting removed. The first one, it is absolutely useless, even if it is 3 second stun, slow, goddamn. His first new gadget would now be called Emergency Torpedo. When activated, Hank immediately dashes backwards and he shoots one of his torpedoes to the front. So, I know that this was how Maze's original first gadget used to work. It was an inverted dash, but let me explain why this probably work a lot better with Hank. To start off, you can technically change the direction where you're facing while charging the attack. So just by doing that, you could already say where you would do the dash backwards. So even if you're moving forward, but if you're charging the bubble to the back, you would still dash forward. And because of that, the major weakness I would say was pretty much removed, because you have full control to where you will dash. The second thing is that no matter where situation you are, you will pretty much always get value, because in Maze's case, you would have a tiny explosion of stun behind you, but with Hank, you would just shoot a torpedo that is guided as well to the front, and this would be very helpful no matter what scenario. And I feel like honestly, this is also very good at kind of a safe pick in a certain way, like against assassins could be really helpful in case you don't have the super. I am aware that this is very close to Piper's gadget, but because Hank does not have any way near close the aggression that Piper can have, I honestly feel like this would be an overall well-balanced gadget, honestly. His new second gadget, by the way, I am removing the first one as well, because number one, it's just a copycat of Crow's first gadget, and on top of that, this gadget rarely does anything, most of the time it's just delaying your inevitable death. So, with that explained, new second gadget, Torpedo Madness. Are you tired of people not respecting the danger of your super? Well, the second gadget will make your next super, instead of shooting 6 instantaneous torpedoes in 6 directions, now you'll just stand still, spin, and shoot 18 torpedoes. While you're doing this, you are, well, in one position you cannot move, and this attack takes 1.5 seconds to do. Now, this would be very good in case you're surrounded by enemies. I could see this being very helpful. And on top of that, you would just get pretty much a massive control of the entire map. I could see this being very helpful to a lot of moments, honestly. Like strategic zoning, anything that's kinda open, this gadget could be very helpful. The knockback, the damage, the slow, and I mean, we're talking about 18 torpedoes. I mean, that's a lot. You cannot just very easily touch all of that. You would need some serious skill to not get hit by at least one of those torpedoes. And that would mean a push, a slow, and 1000 damage. So I definitely think that this gadget could be very good. And on top of that, do not forget that more torpedoes also means more recharge rate. So you could very easily get a super from this Torpedo Madness. Attention, this gadget only affects the next super. So you cannot cycle like 36 torpedoes out of nowhere. Do not worry about that. Now that we already talked about the gadgets, let's talk about his star powers. The first one is Torpedo Accuracy. His super is now really guided. By this I mean like Bell Hypercharge guided. I honestly think that this would not be like super broken. I do understand that it would be very hard to dodge it, but at the same time, because they go in 360, you, in best case scenario, I would say that you would hit like 3. Best case scenario for sure. So, I feel like this is overall a pretty solid star power. And the second one, it is also very good, which is Ready for Duty. While Hank's bubble is 80% or more filled, he becomes immune to slows, stuns, or knockbacks. One of his biggest counters is pretty much being kinda denied. I honestly think that both these powers are very good. Maybe the first one, depending on how guided it would be, it could receive a tiny nerf. And at the same time, the second one, I feel it would be a little bit situational. Like, probably in ranked, I could say being very helpful, because as a last pick, this star power could be very powerful. But other than that, I feel like the first star power would be overall slightly better. But who knows, against the Frank in this crazy meta, you might want to use the second star power. Mythic Gear. Torpedo Army. All of Hank's abilities have 50% more torpedoes. Except for the first gadget, cause what? You're gonna shoot 1 torpedo and a half? Now that's crazy. So honestly, 50% torpedoes, it is pretty powerful, I will be honest, but I honestly feel like these will only be really helpful with the help of the first star power. Like 9 very guided torpedoes could be very strong, and I know that a lot of you are thinking about the second gadget, and yes, you would shoot freaking 27 torpedoes. But at the same time, there are already so many torpedoes, and because of the knockback and the slow, it is a bit unwise to say that you would hit more than 1 torpedo to 1 person. So you're just getting like a little bit of more area control. Obviously, it would be a lot more torpedoes, and yes, it would be a lot of fun to see out of nowhere 27 torpedoes flying, but still, I feel like honestly, these will be a lot more with the first star power, and yeah, pretty much that, because you have zero effect with the first gadget. So honestly, I feel like these would be a very strong mythic gear, but Hank absolutely deserves it. And finally, the cherry on top of the cake, a fresh new hypercharge. Honestly, I will say that he's one of the most simplistic ones that I have ever made, but honestly one of the most powerful at the same time. So starting off, allow me to introduce you to Prawn Ready. I know, a great name I picked. So start off a 25% damage increase and a 10% movement speed increase. Nothing else, no shield, and the speed increase not that crazy as well. It will take you 3.33 supers to get it, mainly because now it's a lot easier to get the super, so overall I feel like it's a fair rate. Hank's torpedoes now bounce off of walls. These would be very hard to... First off, these would be very good. But at the same time, it would be very hard to determine where it would bounce, because the torpedoes are slightly guided. So I could see the guided mechanic interfering a lot with the bounciness of the torpedoes. And yes, I am very aware that these would be very strong with the second gadget. I know that, do not worry. That's kind of the point. So on top of that, when you activate the hypercharge, so when you press that button, you shoot 1 torpedo in the direction of all of the enemies. So on top of that, you get that 1 extra torpedo. So even if you don't really have all of the super already charged up, if there are a couple enemies close to you, you can activate the hypercharge, shoot like 3 torpedoes or something like that, and then that will charge your super. And then you use the super to bounce all of those torpedoes to the walls and gain tons of map control. So the first thing that might make this sound a little too broken is obviously the range. I am aware that this is crazy range, but it will not increase the range at all. It is not like Rico or Ruffs at all, and at the same time you're not getting that much unless you use any of the mythic gear or gadgets, which I can see being a little bit of a problem, but at the same time, it's not every map that has a very good wall where you can bounce. I mean, this is a hypercharge. Like, this won't be a Rico scenario where you'll just get always tons of value because of the bounciness. This is a one-case scenario where you'll have complete control over anything that's close to the wall, especially if you use the second gadget. Honestly, I feel like this hypercharge could bring a lot of crazy moments, a lot of crazy plays as well, and I cannot wait to see how Hank would be with all of these changes. If you like these changes, please make sure to subscribe. It took a lot of time to think about them. YouTube is saying that you should watch this video, so go do it, please. And I'll see you on the next video.